I've seen a few clips from this show, so bear with me. I was sort of like Sam from Atypical growing up, super matter of fact, blunt, passionate, not understood by the world at times. The difference is he had an early diagnosis. This didn't really prevent any trauma for him, but it sort of allowed for understanding at home and a semi safe space for him to be himself, even though his parents had their own issues and less than ideal traits. But at this point, that just kind of seems unavoidable. No, I don't understand parenting or really life itself or why anybody does it. But well, I mean, from a physical standpoint, I understand why people do it, but I don't understand the like actually having kids. I understand the desire, but not the actually having a kid part. Hey, it is what it is. I think I used to be blunt like Sam from Atypical, but over time, through ignorance, misunderstanding, and shame, I was forced to change who I was, early masking, or be criticized for being rude, annoying, weird, nerdy, all in quotes, of course. Whether it was directly from people telling me, like sort of in their own way, like backhanded in a way, or based off observations of how others were treated for being different and, not wanting to be treated like that. All this suppressing, changing, ignoring my own needs and feelings warped my entire sense of being. Unstable self image, poor self esteem, being so lost, and having to relearn slash find the real me buried under everything, whatever that even is or looks like. Childhood slash past in terms of like school and whatnot experiences is hazy and spotty due to things being too painful to fully recall in terms of all the social cues that I probably missed and whatever times I was being laughed at and I was laughing with people, like I get why my brain is doing it and I'm slightly thankful. I don't know if I can handle it. I, however, wasn't diagnosed early. There was some early intervention with reading and speech, talking a little bit with my shout out to my kindergarten teacher. But it just the word autism wasn't used either due to like there wasn't an awareness, ignorance, and I don't even feel like getting into the whole black community thing with like not wanting to label your kids, but like that label kind of could have. I don't know. Who knows? But I'm just saying what I know now. So it just wasn't used or wasn't even aware back then. Just in general, and if it was, the term autism was probably demonized, and I probably would have been like thrown in some behavioral whatever anyway. So whatever. Um, it is what it is. This is why I was drawn to existentialism. My need for answers to all the whys in life, context, details, etc. Without a reason or a strong desire to live, life just becomes a series of events, an objective sort of thing. It's just bills, unending maintenance to the body, offers slowly to deteriorate and die, which sounds a little bleak. But I mean, that's just how it, in my head, is like really just matter of fact type of thing. This is also my problem with throwing therapy at everyone, especially autistic people. Part about conditioning slash forcing myself to be neurotypical, assimilating, if that's the right word, is you take on the desires slash milestones of like someone it becomes like an unachievable sort of thing. So you're set up to fail. You're destined to fail, kind of. I don't know if I'll ever be able to have a healthy relationship or own a home due to underemployment, the not drawn to material things, not connected or grounded enough to life to want a stake in the world, needing reasons for things and details. Otherwise, in my view, it's just bills, unending maintenance, just for it all to slowly deteriorate over time. This version of me left in the wake slash the rubble of unmasking slash autistic awakening. It really is like rescuing earthquake survivors, moving the rubble piece by piece and hoping they're still alive. The fortress I had slash have around myself is huge and all encompassing. That's the thing with late diagnosis slash late realization, finding out there's a name for the way your brain works and you aren't just a broken human. It's like a second life slash rebirth. And much like the first birth, it leaves you confused, disoriented, emotional, slightly resentful, grieving. It's like the quote, everyone dies twice, sort of a little play on that. Except it's autistic people are sort of born twice, late diagnosed, sort of, or whatever you want to call it. It's sort of like going to college full time slash having a full time worth of coursework, homework, but the subject is you. And you are so disconnected from yourself slash authenticity that the real you doesn't exist or feels like it doesn't exist, or it's just an abstract concept at this point. It's trapped in between or in another dimension, the Twilight Zone. You are doing all this work, inner self work, while still having to live your life, whether that's just the day to day task of existence, while facing existential dread, mental issues, or actually being in college and school, working, raising children, etc., etc. As it goes, more and more as you get late diagnosed because you're doing all these neurodivergent things with your neurodivergent brain. Technically, there may be a form of therapy or a type of therapist for everyone, in the same way that there's technically someone for everyone. But getting to them slash finding them is the hard part. Essentially, you're asking a traumatized autistic person to leave a semi-comfortable place, change their routine, to talk about things that traumatize them, that they have suppressed very well. Even just regular conversation is hard to know, but now you want to talk about my deepest, darkest everything. And these are people with, or we are people with communication issues due to shame and other things. So you can't really even unmask in therapy or in general, at least not all at once. I do think that the work slash self work, inner work is worth it, but it is a big ask, to be honest. And I understand why self death rates are so high for autistic people. I can't fault anyone for it. I want to start saying thank you for your service to my fellow autistic people because it's really wild out here doing the whole life thing with this type of brain and in this type of world. Especially if you were to try to fit in type, that doesn't help. That makes it real tough. But may we all have peace one day, some way, somehow. That's a big part of my ideation and wondering why life is like this. I've adopted various coping mechanisms, spirituality, hope core, a little bit of toxic positivity, etc., just to get through the day and do my best to avoid substances because the addiction rates are very high for autistic people for the reasons I stated before, earlier. I feel like late autistic people, late whatever you want to call it, autistic people really needed a pause in life slash reality just to process their whole life up until that point, just at a chance at ever being authentic. But obviously that's impossible. So the ideation becomes the next best thing. Like trying to figure yourself out as life still goes on. The clock doesn't stop. It's like it's hard. So therapy and slowly unmasking, if possible, is processing your whole life up until that point while the clock still ticks in the present as your life still goes on. It's hence the mental issues, ideation, etc. is very confronting to do. The executive dysfunction that I used to just think was procrastination and being a worthless, broken human being, the internal ableism and shame is a cruel, cruel thing. And it's a whole thing. Probably have to do something separate on that. It doesn't help trying to do all this work with that on top of it. Doing all this work just to exist is hard and unfair to our justice centered, sort of justice seeking brain.